Hello everyone, my name's George Farmer and I'm with Florence today, my daughter, and she's going to be my aquascaping partner, and we're going to set up this beautiful little aquascaper 300 cube from Evolution Aqua. We're going to be using Dennerle plants, some brand new plants in vitro, but also some old plants from old aquascapes which we're going to recycle. We're going to be using Dennerle Scapers Soil, some beautiful mountain stone and also some manzanita wood. I can't wait to get going, Florence, can you?
No.
So without further ado, we'll get started and I really hope you enjoyed the video. Okay, so the first step is installing our soil. So we're using Dennerle Scapers Soil. Like most soils, it's really good. It buffers the pH, it lowers the hardness, it creates a nice environment for the plants and the fish, and I do like to use soils to plant into most of the time. So we're going to start off with a shallow area, a shallow depth at the front, and then it will go to a deeper level at the back, and that creates a sense of depth, exactly. Probably put about half a bag in there. Yeah. So it's an 8 litre bag, so we've probably put about 4 litres in there. I mean, the overall volume of the tank is only 25 litres, so it's quite, got plenty of soil there for planting into. So what we're going to do now is Florence is going to make the soil shallow at the front and deeper at the back. There are various tools you can help to do this. You can use a paintbrush, but in a small tank like this it's probably just easier to use your hands. The soil will try to level out over time, so what we can do is put dividers, substrate dividers in there, separators, just to help keep that soil at an angle. But we're going to be using quite a lot of rock work and wood today, and also some carpeting plants which will help keep the soil in place. Okay, that's enough for now. We can always put a bit more in later. We've got another half a bag left, so if we want to put some more in we can. Okay, next stage is to add our rocks. Now I've got some beautiful mountain stone here. This is quite expensive. ADA supply it. Very lucky, I was actually given this by a friend who'd given up the hobby, and he kindly sent me a surprise box full of lovely aquascaping goodies. So shout out to Leon if he's watching. Thank you very much for your lovely mountain stone. So generally we start off with the biggest pieces and we work our way down. We're going to be using some manzanita wood as well, so we don't necessarily need to rely on the stones or the rocks as focal points, but we do need to make sure they look as natural as possible. I quite like this side here. Yeah, because it's got a lot of bits. It's got nooks and crannies, got gouges out of it, so it just looks like just looks a bit more interesting. So what we do is we position that, roughly about, we're using a rule of thirds, position it off centre by about a third. I think that looks okay, Florence. What do you think? Yeah, I think it looks good. Okay, so we've got our main focal point stone in there, and I'm going to put all the stones in there now, and so we'll go for the next smallest, assuming it's interesting, next biggest even. Yeah, so that's quite interesting, isn't it, Florence, that one? Yeah. They're just flat down there, and then we can put the carpet plants in front of it and around there. Yeah. Okay, good. So that's the stones in place. Okay, next stage is to add our wood. So got some beautiful manzanita wood here, sent over by Tom Barr. I've pre-soaked it, so hopefully it will sink once we fill the aquarium up with water. And just like installing the rocks, you take your time, making sure the position looks as natural as possible. What I'm going to try to create is almost like a mangrovey root appearance with the wood creeping over the rocks, so hopefully it will look really natural. I think that's about probably enough, because we need some room for planting. We've got some room at the front for the hair grass. Yeah. Yes, I'm happy with that. Yeah. Okay, so I just had a look behind the camera to see what the aquascape looks like, and it looked a little bit empty at the top there. So I've just added another piece of wood to add a little bit of height. It's coming out the top of the tank, which I really like. I like wood coming out the top of tanks, and I've added it so it looks like it's part of this wood here. So it's all following the same kind of line to make it look really natural. Okay, next stage is to wet our soil ready for planting. So in a small tank like this, I like to use a spray mister. Otherwise you can use, I like to use a kitchen colander for bigger tanks, so something like this. Some of you may have seen this before. but this just stops the soil from getting too disturbed and potentially clouding the water. But in small tanks, a spray mist is fine. Some people even plant into the soil dry, so I prefer to wet it. It just makes the planting a little bit easier, and I find it helps grip the plants so that hopefully they don't float too much when you add the water. Okay, so we've got our soil. Next stage is planting. So we've got some beautiful Dennerle In Vitro plants here. These are Eleocharis pusilla. I've actually had them for nearly 2 months now. They're starting to go a little bit yellow, but it just shows what kind of long shelf life these plants have. So we'll be planting that around the foreground, and then I've got some plants from old aquascapes and some new potted plants. So we've got some Bucephalandra, some Anubias mini or Anubias petite, and yeah, there's about 2 or 3 Bucephalandra species in there, and loads of moss as well, loads of Christmas moss. And in here we've got some Lagenandra meeboldii and some Hygrophila compact, and also some Hygrophila pinnatifida, which is been growing in an aquascape for a while now, and it's actually gone red. It's completely adapted to its submersed form, and so I'm really looking forward to planting that. So we've got a real good selection of plants. We probably won't use them all, but it just gives you an example how you can use brand new plants and plants from old aquascapes together to create a brand new creation. Okay, so Florence is preparing a pot of in vitro Dennerle Eleocharis pusilla. I'll do the same. I'll just show you what I do quickly. So we've got the pot there. We simply remove the lid, pull out the plant. It should come out in one big portion like so, and then you can probably see some of the agar jelly there. We can flick some of that off, and then the rest, if I just get the bucket, Florence, to show them what I do. We just have a bucket of warm water, put the whole portion in, and then just gently squeeze it, massage the roots to get rid of as much agar jelly as we can. We don't want any agar jelly in the aquarium if possible, because it does contain so much nutrients. It tends to attract algae. Then we can separate the plant into individual portions, which Florence is doing for us right now. Florence has been working with me now on quite a few aquascapes, haven't you?
Yeah.
And what's the best thing about it, do you think?
Probably if I'm part of doing the aquascape, like doing the plants and giving ideas on the hardscape, but if I'm watching you at your workshops, probably seeing how much in like an hour or 2 hours or so it can become a beautiful piece of art.
Oh, thank you, Florence. So we're just separating the plant into individual portions. The more portions we separate into, the better coverage you'll get. And you can probably get a good 10 or 12 portions out of one pot of in vitro Eleocharis pusilla, which represents really good value for money. You know, when you see the in vitro pots in the shop, sometimes they're typically much smaller in terms of size, but much greater in terms of quantity. So there we go, plenty of plants there to choose from. We could probably split a couple of these up into half to get more coverage. We've definitely got enough for planting our little cube, but it's better to have too many plants than not enough. I always like to plant really heavily, especially in a new aquascape where algae tends to be a big risk. The more plants we plant, the more plants we have at the start, the more chance we will have of not getting algae. Okay, so we've prepared our Eleocharis pusilla. We're ready to plant it. I'm going to plant it all around the foreground, get as good a coverage as I can. And Florence is going to kindly hold the tray for me. Just pop it in there. There is sometimes a risk of the plant coming out when you take your tweezers out. Sometimes the plant likes to come out with the tweezers. So what you can do is just gently, I'll show you what I do. Pop the plant in, and then if you gently put your finger on top of the plant, and then just wind the plants out of the way. And then take your tweezers out, and then hopefully the plant will stay in place. Okay, so we've planted our Eleocharis pusilla. We've used 3 pots of Dennerle In Vitro plants. Our next step is to add our Lagenandra meeboldii. Beautiful plant, similar to Cryptocorini, originates from India, and we prepare it very similar to Cryptocorini. So we remove the pot, we remove the rock wool, easier to do that under the water, and then we can split the plant into individual portions. We could probably get 2 or 3, maybe even 4 plants from each pot, hopefully. And this is a beautiful plant. Under good light it will turn like a beautiful orangey red colour. It's quite a slow grower as well. It tends to grow new leaves from the same rosette, so it doesn't normally send out runners in my experience, so quite low maintenance. And it's just lovely for adding a bit of splash of colour to your aquascape without being too sort of high impact. I prefer more muted colours in aquascaping rather than not the bright reds that you can see sometimes. What's your favourite? You like red plants, don't you, Florence?
Yeah, they're my favourite.
I actually like brown plants.
Bit boring, isn't it?
Cryptocorini Wenditii brown is one of my favourites. Okay, so what we can do now, and Florence can help me with this, we can trim the roots back to about 1 centimetre, just over 1 centimetre.
I can do this if you like.
Yeah, you do that. There you can do this. I'll use these ones. Yeah, that's about right.
Now pass them to you and then you can plant them.
Yeah, we'll just put them back on there once you plant, and then I'll help you trim. So we've got quite long roots on there. That's a really nice healthy plant, and we can just trim that back, and it makes planting much easier, and it helps stimulate new root growth as well. So it's a bit funny, it's just got one leaf on that one. It's got a really good root structure, so hopefully that will encourage new leaf growth quite quickly. Okay, and then they're quite substantial, the plants, so we can actually use bigger tweezers for this job. So we get our plant, we're going to go, yes, we'll go over to the right for this one. We'll pop that, push it in quite deep. No, for it, all over to the right hand side. We're going to use some different plants over to the left. That's it, perfect. Be careful not to move the wood if we can help it. You might have noticed the top piece of wood has come off. It kept falling over, so I've just taken it off for now, and then I'll put it in position later on. Okay, well done. Okay, so that's the Lagenandra in. Next we'll plant our Hygrophila compact. So same method as before, remove the rock wool like so. You do it underwater to make it easier. It's really nice healthy root growth on here. You can tell a healthy plant because it's got bright white roots. If the roots are brown, then the plant's probably not as healthy. So this is in its immersed state, so we can take any leaves that aren't perfect off. So this is in its immersed state, so the plants in the nurseries are grown out of water, which is called immersed, and what happens is when they're grown underwater, they slowly change, they adapt to their underwater form, which is sometimes, depending on the plant species, is very different.
Where do you want to plant these?
So these will be on the left hand side.
Okay.
So we've only got 3 portions, but this is hopefully will branch out and create quite a nice bushy appearance. We have some Echinodorus tenulis here. Now this is a bit of a brute. This is actually in its submersed form already. I took this out of a display tank in Aquarium Gardens. So shout out to Dave Pierce from Aquarium Gardens for letting me take some of his plants. This will grow really quickly. It will send out runners and it will kind of spread all over the aquascape. But I'm just putting it in there to start with.
Whereabouts?
If we go a little bit sort of there along the left hand side, yeah, and I'll do the same on the right. and it will act as a nice transition between the background plants and the foreground plants, and it will actually kind of, if you're not careful, it will kind of take over the tank. So you need to really keep it in check, but it's ideal for a new setup because it grows so quickly and it helps fight off algae.
There's 2 roots on here.
Yeah, just pick them apart. I'll use those 2. How many have you put over there already? Just one, okay. Okay, next step is to glue some moss, this is Christmas moss, to our wood. So, and maybe a little bit to the rocks as well. This has been grown submersed for a few months now, so it's definitely adapted to its underwater life. So it will hopefully grow really well in our aquarium. Really healthy. I can't see any algae on it. Hopefully there's no snails on it, although actually it doesn't matter if there's snails on it. Why is that, Florence?
Fish that we're getting are called dwarf pufferfish. So they're about that big, but they live on a diet of snails and bloodworm. They
like snails. It helps keep their beaks. They have teeth that can continually grow. So by eating the shells, it keeps their teeth down. And they're quite fussy feeders. They like live foods and they like bloodworm. Bloodworm's actually not that nutritious, so snails is probably one of the better foods for them. I'll just give you a quick demonstration on how I use the super glue. So we just take a tiny bit of moss off, quite thin layer. Pop a tiny little dollop of glue on, like so. That's all we need, Florence. And then we just offer that up. And now it's glued. Okay, so next we're actually going to glue some of the Hygrophila pinnatifida here. These are tiny little offshoots of a much bigger plant that's been grown submersed. So shout out to Dave again from Aquarium Gardens for letting me sort of take some of his plants from his display tank. They're really small at the moment. They'll grow bigger. They'll add a little bit of colour to the wood. They will need keeping in check because it will grow quite quickly once it starts going, but we like quick growing plants, especially in a new setup. So Florence, if you just want to put a bit there for me. Okay, so last plants to go in are Bucephalandra Wavy Green and Bucephalandra Mini Needle Leaf. I think I can just literally insert these into some nooks and crannies, just wedge it in quite easily. So I think a bit there. Okay, next stage is to fill our aquarium with water. So using my trusty red colander, simply span the aquarium, trying to make sure I don't disturb the wood too much, and then slowly pour in our dechlorinated tap water. So we filled our aquarium up with water, and it's really obvious, you can probably see the white spots of super glue there, which look obviously really unsightly and quite ugly. So what I plan to do is drain the tank off again to expose that, and then hopefully you'll be able to glue some small pieces of moss just over those white pieces to hide them, and actually it will look nicer with a bit more moss in there as well. And then after that I'm going to move the tank while it's drained into its final location, which is in my hallway, and then I'll fit the lighting and the filtration, which will be full of mature media, and then we can add our pufferfish right away. And then I think I'll probably add some large cherry shrimp, which hopefully the dwarf pufferfish won't eat. Okay, so I've drained the water down and exposed the white areas where you can see the super glue. I've already glued a bit of moss over some of the bits, but there's a bit just here that's quite obvious. I'm not sure if you can see it in the video. There's a bit of blob on there, and then a bit of moss to cover it. Not only covers the white bit, but actually it's nice to have a little bit of extra moss in there. It just helps to help the aquascape look, give it a mature look. Moss is really great at giving that sense of aged appearance. Okay, so I've moved the aquarium into my hallway, which is its final location. I've fitted all the equipment, so that's an external filter with a built-in heater and also some clear hose and glass filter inlet and outlet. And the reason I've used that equipment is to hide any possible equipment I can from the aquascape. Because the aquarium is very small, any equipment in the aquarium is going to look really obvious, so it's a really good idea to kind of hide the equipment if you can. The tank's been running for just over a day now. I've already added the fish. There's 5 dwarf pufferfish in there. They've settled in really well, and there's a mature filter, so I know the water quality is going to be fine. And also I'm feeding them some pest snails, which I've been getting from other aquariums, and also my local retailer has a lot of pest snails, and also some bloodworm. So fertilisers, I'm going to be using a combination of an all-in-one comprehensive fertiliser, but also some Dennerle CarboElixier, which is a liquid CO2, but it's biological, it's not a chemical, so it's not as aggressive as the standard glutaraldehyde liquid carbons out there. I may fit a CO2 kit later on. I'm just going to see how the plants fare over the next week or so. If I see they're struggling a little bit, then I might fit a CO2 kit. So I really hope you've enjoyed the video. Please subscribe and keep on scaping. Cheerio.